What professional services should be doing. And so, let's open the floor. Let's just sort of have at it. So, Mike, do you want to start with what professional services, what we should be doing in this space to really capture that attention?
Well.
Sorry, I'll put you first. We'll throw to Kristen after, I promise.
Yeah. Well, there's so many different areas to sort of focus on, but if we started off with just differentiation, which is kind of what we were already talking about, so we kind of sort of jumped the gun a little bit, but it is that point of everyone's going after anyone and everyone, and the more you can kind of get focused on a particular niche area or focus on a specific audience, the more you can do that, the more you can then refine your messaging about the specific pains and problems that that audience is having, which then means that all of your content and all of the advertising that we do to attract people, we're honing in on that exact problem that that person is having.
Yeah.
Or if we're using things like social media and stuff, we can really target that exact audience because we know who they are.
Yeah.
If you just go, okay, I just want kind of anyone in Australia. Okay, great. That's a very big campaign and it's a very expensive campaign.
Yeah.
But if people can get a little bit more refined about it, whether it's geographically, demographically, if they can just start to narrow in on that particular audience, that allows us to create a much more refined campaign that'll deliver.
So you say get niche. Get niche, be brave to get niche.
100%, yeah. It's to identify an audience or a persona and really hone in on that person, and that's who you want to be speaking to the entire time.
Well, from a video perspective, it's all about telling a story, right? And yeah, exactly. And a company, even if it's B2B, there's people behind a company. It's actually human to human, even if it's company to company. And I think a lot of people try to just push their brand. And you don't connect, you can't hug a company, right? You want to think about the person behind it, and you want to be thinking about who's going to be actually receiving this message and make sure everything's targeted to them and that you're really telling your story from a humanistic perspective, that they're actually getting to know you as a brand, as a person behind it. So the story, I think, is such an essential part of it.
And Kristen, how does branding sort of tie into this?
Well, this is fundamental.
Everyone stand back.
So look, for us at Fontaine Swatch, the first thing we ask them to do is exactly what people have been expressing so far, which is to really, let's identify and understand who your audience is. I think we talked about that and we've probably been over that, but really be as specific as you can about that audience. The second thing, we need to identify what is the need or the problem that you are solving for that audience, and clearly articulate that. The third is, when you are solving that need or problem, what is the value proposition that you are giving? Now, when you're doing a value proposition, there's usually two aspects to it. It's either you've got a technical advantage or a process-driven advantage that you can talk through that value proposition that sets you apart. But for the majority of service firms, it's actually about the way that you execute your service. Is it fast? Is it really heavily engaged? Is it agile? Is it actually that you're really cost effective? There's a lot of businesses that are out there that pride themselves on being a low-cost service provider, and that's an absolutely valid marketing strategy.
Actually,
to
that's
adopt.
a good point. We should should say more about that. Is that it's okay to
It's
be
okay to be a low-cost provider.
That is your niche.
Fine. Yeah.
So long as you aren't a low-cost and a high-cost provider, and then everyone gets confused.
Yes, exactly.
Sorry, I didn't cut you off, but I think that's a really
absolutely.
good point
and
to get
that's
across.
that understanding what your value proposition is, so that you can articulate it. From a branding perspective, we take and absorb all of those aspects of your business and your brand, and our role is to create a preference for your service over the competition. So what we need to do is really understand it, intertwine your value proposition, and then we've got to create the emotional connection. Now this is as I said, this is why we love branding with services businesses, because it's about the emotional expression that we can convey through your colour palettes, through your fonts, through the elements and the imagery that we use, because as soon as somebody has that first impression, they automatically get a sense of, this is the type of service I'm going to receive.
I think we all love doing services for that, right?
Exactly.
Because we have to how do you turn this service into this
Experience.
experience? So you really have to go out of the box every time, and you think, what does this mean? What does this entail? How should I feel? What should they react to this afterwards? What kind of story are you building around this service? And with that, what's so important about that, though, is not just once you create that, it's the funnel, right? Chris, I think you could talk a lot about this, is once you create that, you're going to have a different, you're going to go a different
message for each step.
For each step of the way, and it's important that you're hitting the right steps.
Yeah, and that's a big thing that I think professional services don't do, is that even when we define the customer, where are they in the journey? You know, like if it's basically they don't know about your brand or your service, then how are you educating them? How are you making them aware? And then if they're further down where they know of your brand, but they know about every other brand that you relate to, how are you making yourself relevant and valuable? And then further along, when they've purchased from you, how are you using content to add more value, that they stay around? And this is very important for professional services, is that it's not just enough to just go, hey, we're good, or we're a good option.
Because surprisingly, everybody says that.
Everyone. And so it's also about capitalizing on making sure that you're addressing your customer at each point in their journey.
Yeah.
Because that's, and I don't need to tell you anything, because if you actually think about how you consume, and everyone consumes services, like think about your accountant or anyone that you do, you know, it's not you've probably experienced the same sort of marketing, where you've picked your accountant because they've addressed a particular concern better than others. And so this is what we need to be doing. And everyone, be thinking about your professional services when we're talking about these kind of things. Are you doing these steps, or are you falling victim to that price commodity challenge?
So we like to think of it we use 3 descriptions. We say, are you unique?
Yep.
Are you relevant?
Yes.
And are you engaging?
Perfect.
So if you're doing those 3, then you are conveying your value proposition to your audience. If you're not, you're getting lost in the noise and lost in the competition.
Yeah.
Okay.